During Thanksgiving weekend poker night, my cousin Bradley suddenly said the game was boring and wanted to raise the stakes. He slammed his BMW key FOB on the table and asked if anyone dared to match it. I knew he was just showing off that he'd bought a BMW. Everyone was intimidated, quickly saying, "Just playing for fun, can't match that." Then kissing his ass about how amazing he was. So young and already driving a Beamer. I hesitated because my whole cards were 3 kings. After soaking up all the compliments, Bradley was about to smugly shuffle the deck. When I slid my BYD electric car keys forward and said quietly, "I'm in," the whole room went silent. Everyone stared at me in disbelief, and Bradley's eyes went wide. The atmosphere turned hostile. The moment we both put down our car keys, any sense of family was gone. But I didn't regret it cause he was the one who put up his BMW first. If he could play this dirty with family, I didn't give a damn about his feelings anymore. Bradley sneered, "What money do you even have? You're trying to bluff me with that piece of shit BYD. This is a BMW. Get your money together first. Don't try to scam me with that cheap electric crap." I stared at him coldly. I hated playing cards with Bradley. Everyone was supposed to be having a good time over the holiday, but he used his wealth to push huge bets every single time. Anyone who's played poker knows that. Having less money than your opponent leaves you with zero dignity. Just, it's getting steamrolled. When we were betting a buck or two, he'd throw down 500. We'd all tell him not to play so big with family. But he'd act all innocent and say, "Is 500 really that much?" He was bullying us for being poor. Bullying us because we couldn't match him. He came to the poker table, just to toy with us poor relatives in our dignity. I knew my BYD couldn't match his BMW. So I turned and called over my girlfriend. We were about to get married, and she was wearing the jewelry I'd bought her. I told her, "Put your gold chain and bracelet on the table." My girlfriend looked at me without even asking what my cards were. She immediately took off her chain and bracelet and placed them on the table. In that moment, a phrase popped into my head. With a wife like this, what more could a man ask for? I said seriously to Bradley, "That's enough. Now are you going to show your cards?" Bradley's expression changed. He clenched his jaw, probably never expecting me to actually stand up to him. With a mocking tone, he said, "Little bro, don't say I didn't warn you. I can afford to lose a BMW. But if you lose everything, how's your whole family gonna survive the next 5 years?" I should. My head doesn't matter. We'll get by our own way. Besides, didn't you and your wife just say at dinner that I wasn't bold enough? Bradley's face darkened even more. I'd never wronged him, but earlier at the dinner table, just because I made less money than him, he'd used this condescending attitude to mock me for being too timid, not daring to take big risks, not like him now that he was a business owner. Halfway through his bragging, my dad had offered him a cigarette and tried to light it for him, but Bradley didn't even cup his hand around the flame. City folks and girls might not understand what this means, but in rural communities, when an elder lights your cigarette and you don't shield the flame with your hand, it means you don't respect them. It's a public humiliation. Everyone nervously looked at Bradley, asking if he'd show his cards, took a deep breath, and suddenly said, "If we're gonna play, let's make it even bigger. That's the only way this is exciting for me." He suddenly placed his cards face down on the table, covered them with a plate, then walked outside. We sat inside and watched him take a small wooden box from his BMW's trunk and bring it into the room, setting it on the table. When he opened the box, it was full of cash. Bradley said proudly, 300 grand. You in or not? Our actions had already caught the attention of the older relatives. Uncle Jim saw what Bradley was doing and freaked out, immediately saying, Are you crazy? That's your business. Advanced payment for the new year." Bradley sat down with a grin, completely nonchalant. "It's fine. I can afford to play. Question is whether little bro here dares to match it." I immediately understood Bradley's scheme. In poker, you're supposed to have a cap to prevent stakes from getting too high. But when Bradley started playing to show off his wealth, he specifically said no cap. I wanted to keep raising the stakes until I couldn't match anymore. And I'd lose everything. Sure enough, he arrogantly said to me, "Don't tell me you can't come up with this money. If you can't match it, you can't take back what you've already bet." Uncle Jim immediately understood Bradley's play. Now, even he couldn't help but laugh, then went back to playing mahjong with the other elders, not even glancing my way. I clenched my fists, saying nothing because I simply couldn't come up with 300,000 in cash. Then my girlfriend suddenly spoke up. "It's okay. We'll put up our house." In an instant, everyone turned to stare at my girlfriend in disbelief. Uncle Jim forgot to draw his mahjong tile, and Bradley stared at us too, his expression somewhere between fury and nervousness, both of them trembling slightly. Now, even the elders stopped playing mahjong, gathered around us, saying the stakes were too high. My dad panicked. He rushed over and without a word punched me in the shoulder, saying frantically, "Are you out of your fucking mind? You trying to bankrupt the whole family?" My dad cursed me out while trying to see my whole cards, but I pressed down hard, not letting him look. Anyone who knows poker understands. You absolutely cannot let anyone see your whole cards, because their expressions will give you away. I had 3 kings. Only 3 aces could beat me. Bradley was the one who started this war. And any experienced poker player knows that with 3 kings, it's either total bankruptcy or blood on the table. My girlfriend said, seriously to Bradley, "Our house is worth 500,000. That's 200 grand more than you just bet you in, or not." Uncle Jim shouted angrily, "You're all insane." He lunged at the table trying to push all our chips back, yelling at me, "Stop messing with your cousin. He's a big businessman. He doesn't want to make this personal. Apologize to him right now. Don't you want him to help you make money in the future?" I grabbed Uncle Jim's arm and roared at him, "Get your fucking hands off our stuff." Uncle Jim didn't expect me to yell at him. His whole body shook. I said through gritted teeth, "When he bet 500, you didn't say anything. When he bragged at the dinner table, you made my dad light his cigarette today. He put his car keys on the table first. I'm seeing this through to the end." Uncle Jim stammered, "How dare you talk to an elder like that?" I looked at Bradley coldly and said, "Either you match the 200 grand and show your cards, or you forfeit everything you've bet. There's a third option. We call off this whole game. Both take our chips back, but you have to bow and apologize to my dad." No one in the room dared speak. Everyone had seen it. Bradley held his cigarette with just 2 fingers, letting my dad light it. But back then, nobody dared say a word of fairness. I'd even watched Uncle Jim's expression. He actually looked proud in that moment. Bradley laughed bitterly and asked me, "You're gonna be this arrogant with family?" I shook my head the moment you put those car keys on the table. We stopped being family. Bradley was silent for a few seconds, then sneered, "Fine. Don't blame me for scaring you. You're the one who wanted to bet, right?" He suddenly picked up his whole cards and showed me 2 of them, a pair of queens. The moment I saw his cards, I felt relieved inside, but my face stayed serious. Bradley said smugly, "Guess if my last card makes it 3 of a kind?" Showing half your cards is a common poker move, trying to scare your opponent while watching their reaction. He couldn't scare me because even if he really had 3 queens, my 3 kings still beat him. I'd been worried he might have 3 aces, but now I knew that worry was pointless. Bradley's show-off move had actually backed him into a corner. Of course, even though I felt relaxed inside, my face still showed strain. As I said, "I'm betting you're bluffing. Are you matching or not?" Bradley stared hard into my eyes as if trying to read my thoughts. Poker is all about acting in guts. Right now, he couldn't make up his mind. Uncle Jim anxiously told him, "Don't bet. Can't you see he's not scared of your cards?" Bradley's face contorted. "If I don't bet, I lose my BMW and 300 grand. He's gotta be bluffing." Usually at family gatherings, people love giving advice. But in this situation, nobody dared say a word. Because in poker, until the cards are shown, you can never tell what's real and what's fake. Bradley nervously observed all the relatives' expressions. Every bet had been his idea. If he backed down now, he'd never be able to show his face around family again. Finally, he gestured to his wife. "Come here." Bradley's wife, Amanda, came to the table. Reluctantly, Bradley told her to put up her jewelry, because Amanda's set was way more expensive than my girlfriend's. Unlike my girlfriend, Amanda refused to take it off. Bradley got anxious and quickly showed Amanda his whole cards. After seeing them, Amanda immediately looked happy, then took off all her gold jewelry and put it on the table. Amanda even said smugly, "Come on, we'll bet with you to the end. Don't regret it when you lose. Everyone here is a witness. Whoever backs out is a piece of shit." I asked, "So you're saying you want to show cards?" Amanda said excitedly, "Why would we show? We're betting you to the end." The greed on her face was obvious. But now nobody had any chips left. Amanda suddenly took off her diamond ring, too, putting it on the table. "This diamond ring cost me 50,000 bucks. I shook my head, not taking the ring. "That thing's worth 100 bucks at most." Amanda exploded, pointing at my nose. "What the fuck do you know? You know what this is? This is a name brand. This is a DR ring." I smiled bitterly. "I don't care what it is. I don't accept it. To me, it's worth 100 bucks. Amanda was about to curse me out when Bradley suddenly spoke up. "I'm putting on my house too." All the relatives gasped. Uncle Jim said frantically, "Don't mess around. That house is downtown, worth $1.5 million. Sadly, sneered Dad, "I'm not messing around. Whatever I bet, he has to match. According to poker rules, each bet can't be lower than the last one. Little bro, do you have the money to match?" I went silent because I simply couldn't come up with that much money. Bradley saw right through my predicament. He laughed loudly and slapped my shoulder. He said, "Some things you can't afford to play. I'll tell you straight, the first reason I'm more successful than you is because I've got bigger balls. As for the second, I follow through on my decisions to the end. So, I'm not showing my cards. If you want to show, you need to put up another 1.5 million. I gasp. Actually, Bradley's strategy was correct. He had way more money than me now. I was in debt and he wasn't. He could bet until I couldn't match the stakes anymore. I knew it was time to show the cards. I had to come up with another 1.5 million to show cards. I absolutely couldn't delay. Because if his next move was still not showing cards, I'd be completely screwed. Even if my whole family died, I couldn't come up with enough to show. Just as I was thinking this, Bradley suddenly sneered and said, "But I'm raising another 1.5 million. You need to match 3 million total." I froze. He pulled out his phone and showed me his balance. Over 1.8 million right in front of me. He took out loan after loan. His credit was amazing, 20,000 from each platform. When his balance hit 3 million, he said, "Seriously? Game over. You can't match it. I don't care what your cards are right now. You can only fold." A bucket of cold water poured over me, extinguishing all my hope. A bucket of cold water poured over me, extinguishing all my hope. The room fell into a deathly silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the ragged, panicked breathing of my father. 3 million. The number echoed in my head, heavy and suffocating. For an ordinary family like ours, 3 million wasn't just a number. It was a life sentence. It meant working until your spine snapped, never seeing the light of day, drowning in debt until the day you died. Bradley knew this. He had weaponized his credit, using the sheer weight of capitalism to crush my dignity. Well, Bradley leaned back in his chair, lighting another cigarette. He didn't even offer one to my dad this time. He just exhaled a thick cloud of smoke, his eyes half closed in arrogant triumph. "I'm waiting, little bro. You wanted to play to the end. I'm giving you the end. 3 million. Match it, or fold and walk away with nothing." Amanda stood behind him, her arms crossed, a vicious smirk plastered across her face. "Don't take too long thinking about it. We still have to go appraise your little house. I heard the roof needs fixing. We'll probably just bulldoze it and sell the land." My dad finally broke. He collapsed to his knees, his hands trembling as he reached out to grab Uncle Jim's pant leg. Jimmy, please. Tell him to stop. He's your son. We're brothers. He can't take our house. He can't do this to us. It's Thanksgiving." Uncle Jim looked down at my dad, his expression devoid of any warmth. He slowly pulled his leg away, adjusting his belt. "Now, don't go crying to me. The kids were just playing a game. Your boy was the one who acted so tough, disrespecting his elders, running his mouth. Bradley is just teaching him how the real world works. In business, the strong eat the weak. If you don't have the capital, you don't sit at the big boys' table." My blood boiled. I looked at my dad, a man who had worked his hands to the bone in a steel mill for 30 years, now kneeling on a cheap rug, begging for mercy from a brother who despised him for being poor. "Dad," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Get up." "You shut up," my dad screamed at me, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Look what you've done. You ruined us over a game of cards. Apologize to him, right now. Beg for his forgiveness." I said, "Get up." I stood up from my chair, walked over and grabbed my dad by the shoulders, pulling him to his feet. I dusted off his knees, refusing to let him look weak for another second. "We don't kneel to them. Never again." I turned back to the table and looked at Bradley's phone. The screen was still glowing, displaying the 1.8 million in approved credit limits across various loan apps, alongside his bank balance. Then, a strange feeling washed over me. The panic faded. The despair evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. I had been playing poker for years, grinding low-stakes tables online to help pay for my college tuition. I knew the math. I knew the psychology. And looking at Bradley's smug, sweating face, I realized something so glaringly obvious I almost kicked myself for not seeing it sooner. I started to laugh. It started as a low chuckle, but it quickly grew into a full, echoing laugh. I clutched my stomach, shaking my head. The sneers on Bradley and Amanda's faces froze. Uncle Jim frowned, stepping back as if he thought I had lost my mind. "Have you gone crazy?" Amanda snapped. "Laughing because you're about to be homeless?" "No," I said, wiping a tear of amusement from my eye. "I'm laughing because I almost fell for it. I almost believed you actually knew how to play poker, Bradley." Bradley's jaw tightened. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Poker rule number 1. Table stakes," I stated, my voice echoing in the quiet room. "You can only bet what is physically on the table. Cash, chips, or verified collateral. You want me to match 3 million? Where is it? I pointed at his phone. That is an approved credit limit from a loan app. It's digital air. You haven't withdrawn it. You don't possess it. It takes 3 to 5 business days for a commercial loan of that size to clear into a physical bank account, especially on a holiday weekend. You don't have 3 million on this table, Bradley. You have a phone showing a web page. Bradley's face twitched. My credit is as good as cash. I'm a registered business owner. I can draw that money right now. Then draw it, I challenged, leaning across the table until I was inches from his face. Go to the ATM right now and pull out 1.8 million in cash. Put it in the wooden box. If you can't do that, your raise is invalid. It violates the fundamental rules of the game. Uncle Jim slammed his hand on the table. Bullshit. This is a family game, not a Vegas casino. We play by our own rules. His word is his bond. You're just making up excuses because you're broke and you know you've lost. Oh, so we're playing by family rules now. I sneered, staring directly into Uncle Jim's eyes. The kind of family rules where an elder brother watches a son try to bankrupt his younger brother? If we're not playing by casino rules, then I declare an all-in. Under universal poker rules, a player cannot be forced to fold just because their opponent has a deeper stack. I bet everything I have on the table, my car, her jewelry, our house. That is my absolute maximum. You want to see my cards? You match my all-in. Any extra imaginary millions you try to throw in just go back into your pocket. Bradley slammed his fist down.
Isai no cap mens no cap.
If you can't match the bet, you fold. Stop acting like a lawyer and admit you're too poor to play. I gritted my teeth. He was using brute force. He didn't care about the rules. He just wanted to use his perceived wealth to completely crush my spirit. If digital numbers and credit limits count as valid bets in your little made-up game, a quiet, steady voice interrupted. Everyone turned. It was my girlfriend, Sarah. Throughout this entire ordeal, she had been sitting beside me, as calm as a placid lake. When she put up her gold jewelry, she didn't blink. When she offered the deed to our $500K house, she didn't waver. She slowly stood up and pulled her phone from her purse. I really didn't want to do this, Sarah said, her voice tinged with a deep sigh of disappointment. I've always believed that money corrupts. It makes people ugly. It makes them act like, well, like you people. She gestured toward Bradley, Amanda, and Uncle Jim. What are you babbling about, you little country bumpkin? Amanda sneered. Are you going to show us your $500 savings account? Beg us for mercy. Sarah ignored her. She unlocked her phone, opened a specialized banking application, and went through a 2-factor biometric authentication. When we met, Sarah said, looking at me with gentle, loving eyes, I loved that you were genuine. You worked hard. You treated people with respect, regardless of what was in their wallet. You never knew my background, and I wanted to keep it that way. I wanted a normal life. But I absolutely refused to sit here and watch the man I'm going to marry be humiliated by a room full of arrogant parasites. She placed her phone dead center on the poker table, right next to Bradley's. You said credit limits and bank apps count, right? Sarah looked at Bradley, her eyes turning into shards of ice. Take a look. Bradley frowned, leaning forward. Uncle Jim put on his reading glasses and peered over Bradley's shoulder. Amanda stretched her neck to see. I looked down too. It was a Chase private client portfolio dashboard. Available liquid cash, $2,450,000. Managed stock portfolio, $6,800,000. Total asset value, $9,250,000. The room didn't just go silent. It felt like the oxygen had been violently sucked out of the air. Uncle Jim physically staggered backward, his knee hitting a chair, sending it crashing to the floor. His mouth opened and closed like a dying fish, but no words came out. Amanda let out a strangled, high-pitched gasp. Her hands flew to her mouth, her eyes bulging out of her skull as she stared at the $9 million figure glowing on the screen. Bradley looked like he had been struck by lightning. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked sickly pale. His hands began to tremble violently. Fake. This is a fake app. It's a screenshot. You're trying to scam me. Sarah didn't argue. She calmly reached into her purse and pulled out a heavy, matte black metal card. A Centurion card. She tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy, satisfying clink right on top of Bradley's plate of cards. There's the concierge number on the back, Sarah said coldly.
Call it.
Put on speaker. Ask them if my name is on the account, and ask them if I can authorize a transfer of $5 million right now. Bradley stared at the black card as if it were a venomous snake. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. Everyone in the business world knew what that card meant. You didn't just apply for it. You had to be invited, and the minimum spending requirements were astronomical. My brain short-circuited. I looked at Sarah, The woman who packed my lunches, who happily rode in the passenger seat of my BYD, who shopped for discounts at the local grocery store. She gave me a small, apologetic smile and squeezed my hand. Sarah turned back to Bradley. You demanded $3 million to stay in the game.
Fine.
I match your $1.5 million house and I match your $1.8 million in loan apps. In fact, since we are playing no cap, I'm going to raise. Sarah tapped her phone screen. I raise you another $4 million, making the total pot to call roughly $7 million. So, Bradley, do you have any more loan apps to download? Maybe you can sell your kidneys? Or do you want to fold? The dynamic in the room flipped so violently, I thought the house was going to spin off its foundation. Amanda lunged forward, grabbing Bradley's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his flesh. Bradley,
Do something.
she's bluffing. She has to be bluffing. Bradley shoved her away, his breathing erratic. He looked at the black card, then at the bank balance, then up at me. His arrogance was completely gone, replaced by naked, unadulterated terror. He was staring down the barrel of financial execution. If he tried to match it, he would be buried in debt for 3 lifetimes. This isn't fair. Bradley stammered, his voice cracking. You trapped me. Trapped you? I laughed, the sound sharp and unforgiving. You set the rules, cousin. You said no cap. You said we had to match or leave everything on the table. Are you suddenly discovering that bullying people isn't fun when you're not the biggest fish in the pond? Uncle Jim suddenly rushed forward, his face stretched into the most grotesque, forced smile I had ever seen.
Now.
Look at this. What a misunderstanding. We're all family here. Blood is thicker than water, right? Bradley was just playing a little joke, a little holiday prank.
Haha.
The stakes got a bit out of hand. Let's just call it a draw. Everyone take your keys and your jewelry back. No harm, no foul. Uncle Jim reached out to grab Bradley's BMW key fob. Touch that key and I will break your hand, I roared. My voice exploded through the room like a gunshot. Uncle Jim froze, his hand hovering inches from the table. He looked at me, terrified, seeing a version of his nephew he had never encountered before. When he threw that key on the table and demanded I match it, you didn't say it was a joke, I said, my words dripping with venom. When he insulted my BYD, you didn't say it was a joke. When he forced my dad, your own brother, to light his cigarette and treated him like a servant, you smiled, Uncle Jim. I saw you smile. Uncle Jim's face flushed crimson, then turned paper white. He couldn't look me in the eye. When he bet his house to force me into bankruptcy, you cheered him on. I continued, stepping closer to the table. You wanted to watch my family burn. So don't you dare stand there and preach to me about blood and water. The moment he put those car keys on the table, family died in this room. Put your hand down. Uncle Jim slowly retracted his hand, retreating to the corner of the room like a beaten dog. I turned my attention back to the sweating, shaking mess that was Bradley. Now, I said softly, leaning over the table, I'm going to tell you exactly why you're going to fold, Bradley. And I'm going to do it by dissecting your pathetic excuse for a poker strategy. Bradley swallowed hard, sweat dripping from his nose onto the table. You showed me 2 queens, I said, pointing at his hand. You did it to scare me. You wanted me to think that your hidden card, the one under the plate, was the 3rd queen. But you're a terrible poker player, Bradley. You don't understand the psychology of a winning hand. I tapped the wooden table for emphasis. If you actually had 3 queens, you would have a monster hand. If you had a monster hand, your only goal would be to keep me in the game. You would want to milk me for every dollar I had. You would have raised me 50,000, maybe 100,000, an amount that hurts, but an amount I could realistically scrape together. You would have practically begged me to call so you could take my house. I pointed at his phone again. But instead, you dropped a $3 million nuke. You took out high-interest loans, you risked your business, you put up an amount you knew I mathematically couldn't match. Why? I paused, letting the silence crush him. Because you were terrified, I whispered. You dropped a massive, uncallable raise because you desperately wanted me to fold. And a player only wants their opponent to fold when they are bluffing. Amanda gasped. Bradley flinched as if I had physically struck him. You don't have the 3rd queen under that plate, I declared, my voice ringing with absolute certainty. You're sitting on a pair of queens with a garbage kicker. You tried to use your bank account to buy the pot because your cards couldn't win it. But you miscalculated. Because I'm not folding. And my hand beats a pair of queens. The older relatives in the room began murmuring. Even they understood the logic. Bradley had overplayed his hand out of pure ego. So here we are, I said, standing tall. Sarah raised you $4 million. But I'll be generous. I'm overriding her raise. I'm taking the bet back down to the last physical items on the table. My BYD, my house, and Sarah's jewelry. Against your BMW, your 300K cash, your house, and Amanda's jewelry. I stared him dead in the eyes. Call and show your cards. Or fold and forfeit everything on this table right now. Bradley was hyperventilating. His eyes darted wildly around the room, looking for an escape, looking for someone to save him. But there was no one. His wealth had been his only shield, and Sarah had effortlessly shattered it. He was exposed, naked, and defeated. Amanda grabbed him, her voice shrill and desperate. Bradley, show him. You have the cards, right? Tell me you have the cards. We can't lose the house. My jewelry is in there. Bradley slowly turned his head to look at his wife. The sheer hatred and despair in his eyes made Amanda take a step back. Shut up, Bradley croaked.
What?
Amanda screamed. You bet her home. You bet my wedding ring. Show him the cards. Bradley's hands shook as he reached toward the plate covering his whole cards. He hovered his fingers over the porcelain. For a second, I thought his ego would force him to commit suicide on the table. But then his shoulders collapsed. The fight completely left his body. He pushed the plate away, gathered his cards without flipping them, and shoved them face down into the center of the table into the muck. I fold, Bradley whispered. His voice was so small, so broken it barely sounded human. The room erupted. Amanda shrieked, a piercing sound of pure agony. She lunged at the table, trying to snatch back her gold chain and her diamond ring.
No. No.
You can't take it. It's mine. Sarah moved with lightning speed, her hand slapping down hard on Amanda's wrist. Don't touch the pot, Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave, radiating an aura of absolute authority. He folded. The pot belongs to the winner. That is the rule of the game. If you try to steal from this table, I will have my family's lawyers tie you up in court until you are paying us for the privilege of breathing. Amanda burst into hysterical tears, sinking to the floor, pounding her fists against the hardwood. I ignored her. I slowly reached out into the center of the table and pulled Bradley's mucked cards toward me. Hey, you can't look at those. Uncle Jim shouted weakly. He folded. I paid for the right to see them when I called his bluff, I replied coldly. I flipped the cards over for everyone to see. A queen of hearts. And a 4 of spades. Just a pair of queens. I then reached over to my own cards, the ones I had been protecting with my life. I flipped them over one by one. King of spades. King of diamonds. King of clubs. 3 kings. A collective gasp went through the room. My dad let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like an eternity, collapsing into a chair, crying silent tears of relief. Read and weep, I said quietly. I reached out and pulled the wooden box filled with $300,000 in cash toward me. Then I grabbed the BMW key fob. Then I put my hand on the deed to Bradley's downtown house. Bradley fell out of his chair. He landed on his knees, crawling around the table until he was at my feet. Please, Bradley sobbed, his snot and tears mixing on his face. He grabbed my pant leg, looking up at me with utter devastation. Please, little bro. You can't take the house. If you take the house, the bank will recall my business loans. I'll go bankrupt. I'll lose everything. I was just joking. I just wanted to show off. Please, I'm begging you. We're family. I looked down at the man who, just 20 minutes ago, had threatened to starve my family for the next 5 years. Family, I echoed, tasting the word. It tasted like ash. I looked at my dad. He was sitting in his chair, wiping his eyes. I told you there was a third option earlier, I said to Bradley. Bradley looked up, a glimmer of desperate hope in his bloodshot eyes. Anything. I'll do anything. I told you, I said slowly. We call off the game. We both take our chips back. But you have to bow and apologize to my dad. Bradley didn't hesitate for a microsecond. He let go of my pants, scrambled across the floor on his hands and knees like a desperate animal, and threw himself at my father's feet. He pressed his forehead hard against the floorboards. Uncle, Bradley cried loudly. I'm a piece of shit. I'm an arrogant, disrespectful piece of shit. I was out of line. I'm sorry for disrespecting you. I'm sorry for making you light my cigarette. Please forgive me, Uncle. Please. He kowtowed again and again, the dull thud of his forehead hitting the wood echoing through the silent room. The elders of the family watched in stunned silence. The golden boy, the wealthy businessman they had all kissed up to all night, was now groveling like a beggar. My dad looked down at Bradley. Then he looked up and made eye contact with Uncle Jim. Uncle Jim couldn't hold his gaze. He looked away, his face pale and ashamed. For the first time in his life, my father didn't hunch his shoulders. He didn't look down. He sat up straight. He realized, in that moment, that wealth didn't equate to superiority, and poverty didn't mean you had to sacrifice your dignity. My dad let out a long, heavy sigh. Get up, Bradley, my dad said, his voice steady and firm. Bradley stayed on the floor, weeping. Uncle, please. I said get up, my dad repeated. I don't need your apology. It means nothing to me. But I hope you remember this feeling. Remember what it feels like to be on the floor, completely helpless, looking up at someone who holds your life in their hands. Because that is exactly how you treated us tonight. Bradley slowly lifted his head, his face a mess of tears and shame. I walked over to the table. I picked up the deed to Bradley's house and tossed it onto the floor in front of him. Keep your house, I said. I don't want your cursed property. Bradley gasped, grabbing the deed and holding it to his chest as if it were a newborn baby. And keep your jewelry, Amanda, I said, kicking the pile of gold and the diamond ring toward her. It's tacky anyway. Amanda scrambled to gather her things, weeping silently. But I continued, my voice hardening. The $300,000 in cash? That's mine. Consider it an apology fee for the psychological distress you caused my family tonight. And the BMW? I picked up the heavy, silver key fob. I walked over to my dad and tossed it into his lap. Happy Thanksgiving, Dad, I smiled. You've been driving that rusted-out pickup truck for 15 years. It's time for an upgrade. Enjoy the Beamer. My dad looked at the key fob in his hands, then looked up at me, a genuine, wide smile breaking across his weathered face. Son, are you sure? It's yours, Dad. You earned it by putting up with this family for so long. I turned to Sarah. She was already putting on her coat, slinging her purse over her shoulder. She looked absolutely radiant. Ready to go home? She asked, grabbing the keys to the BYD. More than ready, I said, taking her hand. I picked up the wooden box filled with $300,000 in cash, tucking it under my arm. We walked toward the front door. None of the relatives said a word. The silence of the elders was deafening. They parted like the Red Sea to let us through. Before stepping out into the cold November night, I stopped in the doorway and looked back at the room. Bradley was still on his knees, shivering. Uncle Jim was staring at the floor. Amanda was clutching her jewelry. Oh, and Uncle Jim? I called out. He flinched, looking up at me nervously. Next year, I said, my voice cold and final. Don't bother inviting us to Thanksgiving. We'll be eating in peace. I stepped out of the house, slamming the front door shut behind me, severing the tie to that toxic room forever. The crisp night air hit my face, refreshing and clean. The stars were shining brightly above the quiet suburban street. Sarah unlocked the BYD, the headlights flashing silently in the dark. I put the box of cash in the trunk and got into the passenger seat. Sarah got behind the wheel. So, I said, looking over at her as she started the electric engine. $9 million, huh? Sarah blushed slightly, keeping her eyes on the road as we pulled out of the driveway. Technically, it's $9.25 million. The market was up on Wednesday. And you let me use coupons for half-off pizza? I laughed, shaking my head in disbelief. She reached over and grabbed my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. I like our pizza nights. I like our life. Money doesn't make a home, baby. You do. I squeezed her hand, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over my heart. With a wife like this, I muttered softly, what more could a man ask for? Sarah smiled, accelerating the car down the dark, empty road. Behind us, the house where we had left Bradley and his pride in ruins faded into the distance, swallowed by the night. Tomorrow, my dad would wake up and drive a brand new BMW to the grocery store. Tomorrow, we would deposit $300,000 into our savings account to pay off the mortgage on our house. And tomorrow, Bradley would wake up knowing that no amount of money could ever buy back his dignity. We drove into the night, leaving the past behind, heading toward a future that was finally, truly ours.